I'm going to start with 1994. Actually, the incident happened in '67, but in 1994, I was walking through a bookstore in Seattle and happened to pick up a book called Above Top Secret by Timothy Good. And I was thumbing through it and happened to land on page 301 of that book. And I was astounded to see a paragraph talking about missile shutdowns in Montana in 1967. And it was a very short paragraph, but it described what I thought was my incident. I was pretty excited about this because, of course, I had been ordered not to speak about my incident ever. And so I didn't understand how this could have gotten into this book unless the Air Force had declassified it. So I went home, and the first thing I did was tell my wife about it because I had never told her about it. And I think it was had been married for about 24 years then. And one of her friends suggested I contact MUFON, and I did, and asked for assistance in submitting FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act requests. And James Klotz came through. He was one of the investigators for MUFON at the time, and he helped me initiate the FOIA requests. I told him not to say anything about UFOs in the request, but so when we heard back from the Air Force, they said it was a classified incident. However, since it had been so long, they were going to declassify it and send us documents, which they did. And as soon as I received the first documents, many of those I'll show you here in this presentation, I decided to go public and say that I was there at this incident, and this involved UFOs. And I've been, I went, gave my first interview in 1996, the Great Falls Tribune out of Great Falls, Montana. And then after that, I spoke on the Art Bell show and with Linda Moulton Howe, and as a result of that, I started getting contact with some of the witnesses, more information about what had occurred, and then really got involved in the research, which I'm going to share with you now. All right, so first slide, it just shows that Fred Mywald and myself were crewed up as a missile crew as of October of 1966 at Malmstrom. I just wanted to show that we do have that record. Many of you are probably familiar with the setup of a launch control center, but for those that aren't, the launch control center where I was located and my commander was about 60 feet underground. And we had upstairs, we had housing for the security guards who helped us maintain security for the site and also the launch facilities. So we call this the LCC, or Launch Control Center. We had the main gate approximately here. Above it, this is about a 12-foot high fencing, or gate, and then of course we had fencing all around. Oops, let's go back. So this is what's called a launch facility. where the missiles are actually located. They were about a mile or so away from the Launch Control Center in about a kind of a circle around that point. And each of them was controlled from our location to LCC through what we called the Sensitive Information Network. These were 8-inch diameter cables. They were triply shielded from EMI, electromagnetic interference, and each missile was connected separately to the LCC. They were not interconnected per se. In other words, if something happened to one of the missiles, it would not affect any of the other missiles. The missile wing, of course, controlled by Malmstrom Air Force Base, which was here in about the center of the state. These large dots represent the launch control centers. You can see 01 would be the Oscar flight, located near Roy, Montana. And Echo 1 is near Winifred, Montana. This was about 100 miles or so to the east of Great Falls, Montana. And again, each site had control of 10 missiles. And you can see that those are the little dots here, 02, 03, 04, etc. So in August of 1996, early August, I think, I was able to finally get a hold of Fred Mywald. He retired as a full colonel, but he was the launch commander, the missile combat crew commander, actually, of our crew when the incident occurred. So I'll just play this audio. When I was first able to contact him, I had been searching for him. I didn't even remember his name. I mean, this was some 27 years or so later. I finally got a hold of him.
What degree? I don't recall. I just remember our side of it.
Yeah. All right. Here's the sequence I remember. I remember receiving a call first, and the security guard said, "I've seen some UFOs up here flying around," and I said, "Forget it." I didn't believe him. I kind of hung up on him, and then a little while later, I don't know how long it was, maybe 5-10 minutes, maybe longer, they called back, and the guy sounded real scared, and said there was one just outside the front gate, and he also said, I recall, that one of the other guards had gotten injured in some way. I don't think it was from the UFO. I think it was from trying to climb the fence or something like that. And then I hung up, or he hung up because he had to go. This guard got injured, and then I believe you were either getting up or I woke you up, and then some of our missiles started shutting down. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Is that about how you remember it?
Right. Got some security alarms and
Yeah.
problems at a couple of the sites.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, I'm sure glad I found you.
Reports from the field about UFOs. So I remember the two guards that had gone out to one of the sites. Finally got back scared to death. We had to relieve them of duty.
Yeah. Oh, you mean our guards?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and roof patrol tank.
Oh, I see.
They had gone out to one of the sites. The LS, and on the way back, they lost radio contact, and we ended up having to send them back to base earlier. I'm not sure what happened. I don't think they ever returned to guard scared about? Well, they had seen some crazy things. Then, oh, they did? Yeah.
They reported that to you?
They reported it to the top side guy.
Oh, the top side guy, that's right, okay. Okay. Okay, well, interesting, don't you think?
Yeah.
So I was, the guard upstairs was telling me about these lights in the sky, and he was convinced that they were not airplanes. He kept repeating that. They're not airplanes because of what the maneuvers they were doing. And they were going very fast across the sky, stopping on a dime, reversing course, making 90-degree turns. And he said aircraft don't do that, and no engine noise. So I didn't know what to think of this call. I kind of dismissed it a little bit and asked him to call me back if anything more interesting happened regarding these lights. And so we hung up. 5 minutes or so later, he called back, and this time he was screaming into the phone. He was clearly frightened. He had all the guards out there. We had about 6 other guards with their weapons drawn, looking at a red-orange pulsating light hovering just above the front gate. And he wanted me to tell him what to do next. This time, I took it very seriously. In fact, it sounded like we were undergoing some sort of an attack up there, but I didn't know quite what to think. I just told him to make sure the facility was secure. That was their job, and do whatever you have to make sure the security of the facility upstairs. Then he hung up. One of his guards got injured, and then I woke up Mywald, who was taking a nap, started to tell him about the phone calls, and then we started getting missiles going offline. We had to go through our procedures. We also had a couple of indicators of a possible incursion or entry into one or more of the launch facilities. We got indicator lights to that effect. So I called back upstairs to send guards out to those sites. Of course, I asked them about the object they had been looking at, this red-orange bright light that had been pulsating. And he said the light just took off just as I called. And so this object was up there when these missiles went down. We lost all 10 of our missiles. By lost, we had a way of querying the systems of each missile, and we were getting guidance and control system failure report on each missile. Same message. Guidance and control system failure. We never lost power. We never lost our ability to monitor those missiles. Mywald called the command post, and I ordered the guards be sent out to those 2 sites that had the lights of incursion, possible incursion. They happened to lose radio contact while they were out there. They saw the objects again hovering over those 2 sites. And again, we're very frightened and did not approach. We told them not to approach the sites. Just come back to the launch control center, and again, they lost radio contact doing that. When Mywald hung up with the wing command post, he turned to me and said the same thing happened at another flight. Now, I thought then that he meant that evening. But as it turned out, he was talking about an incident that occurred about a week earlier, about 8 days earlier. That was the Echo flight incident. We were at the Oscar flight, and this is the first time I'm learning exactly where I was located from Fred Mywald. because before I thought I had been at Echo Flight. When we wrote the FOIA request, the Air Force wrote back and sent us documents on the Echo Flight shutdown. So this is a email I have from Fred Mywall. Besides the audio where he confirmed what I just told you, he sent me this email. We were at Oscar. The SAT team responded to the security alarms. The SAT team was directed to the LCF and maintained continuous radio contact, which was interrupted at some point. More than one launch facility went off alert. I was told some years later that one of the security people was taken off duty, site duty. They just couldn't handle, I guess, dealing with these things. Again, we reported all activities at command post in accordance with the applicable checklist. We briefed our squadron commander. We were directed to remain silent. Upon being assigned to the command post as a controller, he reviewed the checklist for UFO reporting. They actually had a UFO reporting checklist, and we as a crew did what we were supposed to do. So, later received a note from Sergeant James Filan, who was stationed at Malmstrom during this time period, and he had lived in the barracks with some of these guards that had been at Oscar Flight, and he confirmed that one of the guards had been injured, and it was his understanding that he aimed his weapon at the craft and fired and was knocked to the ground or attempted to discharge his weapon, was rendered unconscious. And he also had a hand injury, which is what was reported to us. It wasn't serious, but we did have to send him back to the base to get his hand stitched up. Okay, this is another document received under FOIA, and it shows Eric Carlson and Walter Fiegel here were crewed up on 16th of February of 1967. Here's another document we received from FOIA. It confirms the Echo Flight shutdown. All 10 missiles in Echo Flight lost strategic alert within 10 seconds of each other. This incident occurred in the morning of 16th of March. All missiles returned to strategic alert in about a day with no apparent difficulty. So it wasn't as though the object did any damage to our systems. What happened was there was interruption in the, they said there was a signal that interrupted the guidance computer. It's called the logic coupler, actually. And this was upset momentarily. It's not known how that was done. And the state here, the fact that no apparent reason for the loss of 10 missiles can be readily identified is cause for grave concern to this headquarters. And so they asked Boeing to start up an investigative team. And of course, the Air Force started their own investigation. Walt Fiegel, I was able to contact again in August of 1996. This was just a few days after I talked to Mywald. And I don't know, let me try this and see if you can hear what he had to say.
Yep, it works.
I don't know, Skype hands or something. And the maintenance were staying over. There were security and maintenance on site on both, two of the 10 sites. And when the first one went down, I talked to the security out there. They had reported this UFO hovering over the site. And I said, yeah, right, what do you out there. And we struck strike teams to both of the sites that have been occupied. With both strike teams, I didn't tell them what we had heard, via the arrest radio. And I told them to go get within a mile of the site and call back in on the VHF. They both had reported the two. So we had two maintenance crews, two security troops on site, and two strike teams all reporting in.
Is that right?
Yep.
Do you remember any of the names of any of those guys?
Nope.
You don't?
Okay, so there's Walt Fiegel, who was in command of Echo, same situation I was in. And he was contacted, he contacted the maintenance crews and the security guards that were out at two of the launch facilities at Echo, and when he told them not to start up until he was notified. He said they reported we didn't do anything, that the missiles shut down, but we also have these objects hovering overhead, and so they reported UFOs just above them, and then he lost all 10 missiles. Oops. Anyway. Okay, and then I gave him the contact information for his commander at the time, who was Eric Carlson. And Carlson spoke with Fiegel, and Fiegel shared again what he recalled of the event, and he confirmed that's what he recalled also. So this is a letter confirming the Echo flight by Eric Carlson, his missile crew commander at the time. I won't play this. This is just a follow-on telephone call I had with Fiegel, just to clarify a few things. By the way, this presentation I'm giving you now is pretty much what I gave to AARO, the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, which I gave in February 15th, 2023. So this is an official, the presentation I was notified is now an official record, historical record that AARO is collecting. There's a man by the name of Ray Fowler. You might, some of you might recognize that name. He has written other books on this subject, primarily of experiencers or abductees. And he happened to be a manager of electrical systems at Sylvania Corporation, which had the electrical contract on the Minuteman I missile at the time. And he had people on site at Malmstrom Air Force Base that reported to him about missile shutdown during UFO sightings, about the two incidents, the Echo and Oscar incidents. And he got a lot of details which he wanted to share with the Condon investigators. The Condon investigation, this was the University of Colorado, was awarded a contract by the Air Force in November of 1966, and the contract was for them to investigate sightings at some of the bases, primarily the missile bases, and give them a report. It was not, as some people advertised, a scientific report. That was confirmed by Condon himself. There was nothing that they had been asked to prove or disprove. It was simply a report of activities. and what they thought of those kind of UFO incidents at missile bases. So they assigned various officers in the Air Force to assist them. One of them was stationed at Malmstrom Air Force Base, and his name was Lieutenant Colonel Lewis Chase, and he was also our base ops officer. I just want to point out that what I read in that book, Above Top Secret by Timothy Good, was a result of Ray Fowler giving an interview with the Christian Science Monitor in 1973 about the Malmstrom shutdowns. And so after reading that, Timothy Good put that in his book. He even gives credit to Ray Fowler. But that is how these incidents became known to the public and to me. Otherwise, they would have been held in secret. But I just wanted to clarify that in case some of you were wondering. Unfortunately, Fred Mywald died in August of 2012. Really sorry to lose him, but we had met after we made that contact in 96 rather. We met a few times at his home and talked things over. And again, he confirmed what I'm telling you. Here's a listing of about 15 incidents related in that they involved nuclear weapons or nuclear facilities, starting in 1945 with Navy aircraft attempting to intercept UFOs over the Hanford, Washington nuclear fuel processing plant. They were processing plutonium for the first atomic bomb tests and the bombs. And at least twice that I know of, UFOs were seen hovering over the plant, and these Navy aircraft were sent to intercept them. Of course, 47, Roswell, 1950s, there were multiple reports at White Sands, where the Los Alamos laboratories are, and the proving grounds in New Mexico. 62, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, Ramey Air Force Base had B-52s ready for launch, and even during DEFCON 2, there UFOs were seen at Ramey Air Force Base. Walker Air Force Base, which is previously Roswell, there was an Atlas missile facility, UFO encounters. These are all witnessed and documented. 1964 was the incident near Vandenberg Air Force Base with Robert Jacobs, where UFOs were filmed, actually videotaped over the Pacific during a test flight with a dummy warhead and a UFO flying circles over the warhead, around the warhead, flying at thousands of miles per hour. Minot Air Force Base in 1966, this was documented, seen by many witnesses near Mike Flight, I think that was. And then 1966 again, David Schindele relieved a crew that had lost all 10 of its missiles to after a UFO encounter at one of the launch control centers. 67, the two I just described, and 68, another incident at Minot. B-52 crew was interviewed. The entire crew was a witness to a UFO landing near a launch facility. Major Bradford Runyon was one of the main witnesses. This is a very, very well documented incident. And in fact, during this incident, the UFO removed that 20-ton cover, launch facility cover, and placed it to the side. Now, 1975, more reports over Malmstrom sites. 1976, Francis E. Warren, Captain Bruce Fenstermacher, who's also now deceased, was reporting on that. His report can be seen on during the 2013 conference that we had in Washington, D.C. 77, Aviano Air Base, Italy. Again, the UFO just flew over a weapons storage area where nuclear weapons were held and shown a beam of light and then flew off. 79, Schusterberg. There's a new video, by the way, that just was produced and is available on Amazon. It's called the Schusterberg UFO incident. Schusterberg is in the Netherlands. I've been working with one of the witnesses for many years, and again, this is a very well documented incident witnessed by at least 12 airmen that have come forward. This was a joint NATO base with the U.S. and the Netherlands, but it also had nuclear weapons. These are tactical nuclear weapons as part of the NATO defense. 1980, Bentwaters, famous case at near Rendlesham Base, Rendlesham Air Force Base, Rendlesham Forest. It was Bentwaters Base, again, a United Kingdom NATO base with nuclear weapons storage. UFOs came over, shone a beam of light, and then flew off. And like I said, all these incidents have been documented, some better than others. This, again, talks a little bit about the University of Colorado study. It was awarded to the University of Colorado, and Edward Condon was in charge. His deputy was Dr. Robert Lowe. Lieutenant Colonel Chase was selected by the Air Force to assist Condon and coordinate UFO reports at Air Force bases, including Malmstrom. He had the title, actually, of UFO Project Officer. And the reason I bring the Condon investigation up is because this is part of the cover-up of these two incidents, which I'll go into a little bit here. This gentleman,
Good afternoon.
Robert Jameson.
My name is Robert Jameson. Between January 1965 and October of 1967, I was stationed at Malmstrom Air Force Base as a combat missile targeting team commander. Our main job was to point the missiles in the right direction. Also, we may be dispatched from time to time to a restart. In case any missile goes off alert, we have to restart and verify the targeting data. In March of 1967, I was on alert for dispatch. That evening, I got a call from Job Control saying a missile going down in Oscar flight, go out and restart it, which was nothing unusual up to this point. I called my team, then I went down into the hangar. As soon as I got to the hangar, some acquaintances of mine approached me and says, "Bob, do you know what happened?" "No, I don't know what happened." And he says, "Well, a missile, a UFO, was sighted over Lewistown, Montana, actually over Roy, Montana. Lewistown's the nearest town of any significance. But over the Roy, Montana, which is the center of Oscar Flight. And when that UFO, at the same time that UFO was over there, all of Oscar Flight went down. Well, that was highly unusual. I went to Job Control to verify it, and yes, they confirmed it. And I was looking at the status board they have. They have a map, the whole wing. I noticed everything was green. All the lights, they have lights for missile sites. All the lights were green except one corner in the upper right-hand corner was all red. All of Oscar Flight was down. I mentioned to them that doesn't happen. He says, well, it happened once before, about a week before. A UFO was sighted over Echo Flight. About the same time, all missiles in Echo Flight went down. He says, other than that and this is it. It's never have happened before. Personally, I'm never aware of any 2 missiles going down at the same time, let alone 10. I also learned UFO, the people in Job Control was telling me that earlier that day, a UFO was sighted over Belt, Montana, another town in Montana, small town east of Malmstrom. And it went into a canyon. And immediately they notified the Air Force. We sent a team out there to investigate it. And sure enough, there was a UFO apparently at the bottom of that canyon.
Yeah, the Belt incident is significant in a couple of ways. One is that we were able to define the exact date of the Oscar flight shutdown because it happened on the same day as you just heard from Bob Jameson as the Belt sighting. The Belt sighting was very briefly. Truck driver was driving through Belt, Montana, about 35 miles to the northeast of Great Falls, or Malmstrom. And he saw this light pacing him, actually, to his left, and it blinked at him. And then he stopped his truck, got out, and watched this object, this bright white light, descend into a gully. He then calls the Highway Patrol, Montana Highway Patrol. They come out, and they also see the object that had landed in the gully, and they watch the object rise again and fly off. It later came back. So now they reported to the Air Force, and Colonel Chase gets involved, being the base UFO officer, and he goes out there and investigates, confirms that there is some object that had landed in this gully, and decides they can't do anything more that night, but they'll send helicopters out in the morning. He writes a long report, and this goes to many locations, including Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, the Ford Technology Division, and Air Force Headquarters. This is part of that report. He also writes another report and sends it to Edward Condon about the Belt sighting. And in this, he goes in a little bit more detail as to what he did at what times. And here we have it, 3:50 in the morning of the next day. So this would have been the morning of the 25th. He speaks to Captain Bradshaw at the Wing Command Post. Now, the Wing Command Post is the same place that we reported the Oscar incident, our incident. And he coordinates a report that he's going to send out with the Wing Command Post about the many sightings they were having, not only at Belt, but at the base, at Malmstrom Air Force Base. They had objects flying over the flight line and on radar. And so we had to get all that data because the command post had all that data, including our information about our report of the Oscar shutdown. So here is proof that Colonel Chase really should have gotten all that information from command post at this time. And that's going to be important. In May or June of 1967, the Air Force UFO officers had been coordinating with Condon, had a meeting with the Condon team. I think this was in Colorado, at the University of Colorado. And it shows the names of those in attendance. And then Colonel Chase writes a report for the record about his trip report about that meeting. And he also states here that Project Blue Book officers were from Wright-Patterson were in attendance at this meeting, and that basically was decided, apparently, even 8 months before the end of the investigation, that there would be these results. There is no evidence to support a hypothesis that extraterrestrials have visited the Earth. Certain events have occurred that are difficult to explain due to lack of conclusive data and or instrumentation, etc. But it looks like that's how they were going to finalize the Condon report, even before they were finished doing it. In June of '67, there was a letter sent to the wing at Malmstrom Air Force Base stating that their office, this is the Foreign Technology Division, or the home of Blue Book at the time, our office has been informed that during the sightings there were equipment malfunctions and abnormalities in the equipment. One individual stated that the Air Force instructed both military and civilian personnel not to discuss what they had seen, as it was a classified government experiment. Well, when I went in and talked to my squadron commander the next morning after our incident, that was the first thing I asked him, whether this was some sort of an Air Force experimental craft or anything like that. And he said, absolutely not. So there was no classified Air Force experiment going on. Lewis Chase, Colonel Chase wrote back to Blue Book and said this office has no knowledge of equipment malfunctions, abnormalities, etc. during the period of reported UFO sightings on March 24th. And again, this is hard to believe that the wing command post did not inform him of our report that we gave to the wing command post, which was documented by them, about our incident. So basically, Chase lied to Blue Book about that. And in the Blue Book letter, they stated that they had received information about equipment malfunctions on that happened on March 24th. So the question I have, of course, how did they find that out? And I think it had to do with their attendance at that meeting in Boulder, Colorado, in May of '67 with all the other officers there, the UFO officers, including Colonel Chase. Roy Craig was the chief inspector for the Condon investigation, or chief investigator rather, for the Condon investigation. And he went and saw Ray Fowler. They had a meeting, and Fowler gave him a lot of information as to what he had heard about the both the Echo and the Oscar flight incidents from his people that had been working there during these events. And here's some of the notes that he took. It includes names, phone numbers of various individuals. And it identifies March 24th as being the date of one of the incidents. Let's see, I'll play a little bit of this as long as it's not too long. This is Roy Craig meeting with Colonel Chase. Remember, Roy Craig is the chief investigator for Condon, and he wanted to see about what Chase knew about these reports.
Following interview conducted by Roy Craig, it was Lieutenant Colonel Louis D. Chase, who is Chief of the Operations Division at Malmstrom Air Force Base, Montana. The interview is being conducted at Malmstrom on October 19th, 1967. The first part of the rumbles from other areas that something happened here on the base related to the failure of flight of it's about 24 people. And this with the UFO business. The local mail has that there was a UFO sighted by one of the back maintenance crew who went out to check out why the flight had lost power. As far as the status of the missile site is concerned, I can't expect this stuff to say because what is on alert, what is not for all periods of time. I'm going to refer you to other people on that. All I can tell you is the time that we had the reported landing, the whole area here, we had lots of reports on them. But I'm not privy to knowledge of what the status of the missile sites are. You can see that of necessity must be classified, and I'm not privy to this type of knowledge. I think the comment that came to us was that some of the maintenance crew who had to check out sites that had lost power unexplained, had said they saw a white light come down and circle the base in broad daylight or something like this, and then this was denied the next day after it had been, and then a big hush up sort of thing. You're not aware of anything of this sort? No, this I'm not, because I wouldn't know what the status of the missile was. It's common for us to have a commercial power failure or something like this. This happens repeatedly, such as commercial power does anyway. And I just have a suspicion that some of the commercial power people there happened to be a power outage someplace and they tried to tie the two of them together. But
So that business about a commercial power failure is baloney. We had triple redundancy in power. A commercial power failure at the missile sites was very rare, but if we did have one, we had diesel generators that would pick up the load, the power load immediately, and we also had battery backup for the missiles. So, and in addition, the Boeing team confirmed that there was never any power failure during these incidents. So, Roy Craig wrote in his book, he has a book called, I forgot the name of his book, but he did write about his interview with Colonel Chase, and the claim that he did not know about these shutdowns is hard to believe. Again, he was the base operations officer. He also responded for the wing when he responded to Project Blue Book on their inquiry and said nothing had happened. But like I said, he did speak with the wing command post about the UFO activity and should have known about the two incidents. Okay, we were able to contact the Boeing team, some of the members of the Boeing team that had been identified. And again, he says there were no anomalies here and power interruptions or transients were found. William Dutton was part of that team, the Boeing team. And this is some of a document we received. This was part of a quarterly report to Strategic Air Command about the wing between January and March of '67. And it states that externally generated signals caused the shutdown of Echo flight, and the possibility of this failure is very remote, since it would each of the logic couplers would have to shut down within 10 seconds of each other. So what this object over these objects over Echo flight would have had to do, and Oscar flight would send a particular signal through 60 feet of earth and concrete, penetrate those triply shielded cables, and send a particular signal to a particular piece of hardware called the logic coupler that would upset the navigational system or guidance system of the missile individually and within seconds. Roy Craig contacted Robert Lowe, who was the deputy of Condon, and suggested that they try to get a hold of any report the Air Force was doing on the Echo shutdown, Oscar shutdown. But it was decided not to because they were discouraged by, Robert Lowe discouraged the whole thing because he said he was told that this report would be too highly classified for them to get a hold of. But here is the regulation, the Air Force regulation that started the University of Colorado study, and it states all UFO reports will be submitted to University of Colorado. Every effort will be made to keep all UFO reports unclassified. However, if it's necessary to classify a report because methods and other factors, a separate report including all possible information will be sent to the University of Colorado. So they had the ability to get that classified report, but they decided simply not to pursue trying to find out more about the Echo and Oscar incidents. Clearly a cover-up. Here's the documentation in their own handwriting about this discussion that I just described. And then finally, as a result, after the Con investigation, final report was issued, stating that basically the Air Force had nothing really to worry about in this regard. The Air Force wrote a fact sheet and basically shut down Blue Book and said that they would no longer be investigating or reporting on UFOs, which was not true. They continued to do that. But they quote or they refer to the kind of investigation here as a rationale for shutting it down. Here's the Colorado scientific study, which it was not. And stated there was no evidence that sightings categorized as unidentified represented technological developments or principles beyond the range of modern scientific knowledge, and there was no evidence that this had national security implications. I can't find that right now, but it's in here somewhere. Okay, that's basically the end of my presentation. And of course, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Bob, yes. So that was great, and I know that we're going to have a bunch of questions. Do we want to take a quick break right now? Hi everyone, we'll get started again in about 1 minute. I'll give everybody a chance to get settled.
It's amazing that little Fargo gets these really big names, and which, I mean, it's a small audience, you know, obviously, but in the world. But the Fargo ones just get really good speakers.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Bob has been gracious enough to stick around and answer our questions. I know we're going to have a lot of questions, so I think what we'll start with is we'll start with one question in Grand Rapids, then we'll move to the Fargo location, and then we'll take a question online, and we'll just keep going around until the questions are done or until Bob gets tired of answering them, one or the other. So is there any questions right now in Grand Rapids?
Yeah, we have one question here. And there's still the MUFON, I don't know, can you see us?
We sure can, yes. Well, I can anyhow.
View. Okay, go ahead and ask your question.
I was just wondering if the security staff person that had their hand injured, if there was a description given of how he hurt his hand.
Good question.
Yes, thank you for your question. The main guard or flight security controller, when I was able to ask him about that, stated that he had cut his hand, but didn't explain how or why his hand was cut. Now, I did get notified by another security guard who lived with these people at the barracks, and he stated that he thought he had heard rumors that the man that got injured discharged his weapon and fell to the ground, and somehow cut his hand in that way, or but again, it was not clear. What I recall was that there was a gash or cut in his hand, and he had to be sent back to the base hospital at Malmstrom in order to get his hand taken care of. And that's about all I know about that. I was never able to contact any of these guys, the guards, after the fact, primarily because I was ordered and signed an NDA, actually, not to discuss any of this with any of them or anyone else in the Air Force. And so I've never gotten a clear explanation of it, but the man was okay. We did send him back to the base.
Thank you.
We have a comment that from one of the people here. She said that maybe we shouldn't worry about nuclear war if the aliens will stop us from engaging in such war.
Well, let me try to answer that comment in a couple of ways. First of all, there is no guarantee that the aliens will intercede to stop a nuclear war. I strongly believe that the incident, my incident, the Echo Flight incident, and the one that happened at Minot in September of '66. So within the span of 6 months, we lost, or UFOs came over and disabled 30 nuclear missiles. Now, to me, this was a message. I took all of this as a message from, we'll say, ETs. To rid ourselves, we should really work on ridding ourselves of nuclear weapons as a whole. There was no damage done to the missiles. It was not intended to be an attack against our missile systems. It was simply a demonstration that, yes, they could disable them, but this was not, to me, this is the way I read it, was not an indication that they would stop a nuclear war. And I don't think there are any guarantees. I think what they would like to see us do is stop the possibility of nuclear war by abolishing all nuclear weapons on our planet.
Interesting answer to that. So the first question is, please ask Bob if he has ever experienced what they call the hitchhiker, like orbs or phenomenon at home.
I did have an abduction experience in 1985. I've spoken about this since about 2013, I think. My wife and I and two small children were asleep one night in a particular house, I recall, in 1985, because I was remodeling homes in the area, and I remember where we were when this occurred. I woke up and saw a blue light coming from our living room. I woke my wife up because we didn't have any blue lights in the living room, and woke her up, and I asked her if she saw the blue light, and she said yes, and I told her I was going to get up and investigate. Someone might be in the house, so but as I tried to get up off, I was paralyzed. I couldn't move. Struggled. I remember struggling with all the energy I had to try to get some mobility back, but I just couldn't move my limbs or much of anything else. When I turned to my wife to ask for help, she was unconscious. Next thing I recall was seeing someone, looked like a person, but I couldn't make out the face, but it had a hood on, like a hoodie. But I still couldn't move, and it was pretty frightening just seeing that in our doorway. The next thing I recall was small beings in the room. In fact, I thought they were children because their stature was small. After that, I was lifted up off the bed, and they started moving, floating towards the bedroom window. And the next thing that happened sounds ridiculous, but this is what I recall from hypnotic regression. I recall going right through the window, not breaking any glass. The window had been closed, locked, and I remember going through the window out to the backyard where there was a bright light. The next thing I recall was being on like an emergency room table, and I was being shown a long needle. Actually placed the needle in front of my eyes like this, a very long needle, and I was told telepathically that they would be inserting this into my groin area and it would not hurt. However, when they started this procedure, it hurt like hell. I remember the pain. It was extreme, extreme pain. I voiced that somehow, again, not verbally, but telepathically, and the pain went away almost immediately. So, but I still remember the intense pain. After that, I was taken to sit into a molded area molded to the side of the craft, and sat down, and was escorted by two small beings again. We were floating, we weren't walking over there. And then I was taken over to another cubicle, turned around, and the being poked two fingers down my spine, apparently checking my spine. And then that was it. I turned around and escorted out along a curved hallway, a bright light at the end of the hallway, and then I was back in my bed. The next morning, neither my wife nor I recalled any of this. There was no memory of this. 24 years later, I was speaking at a conference in Ireland, and we were in the audience listening to a lady who had had an abduction experience, saying that at one point her bedroom was filled with a blue light. So something went off in my head. I turned to my wife and said, "Do you recall a blue light in our bedroom a long time ago?" And she said yes. She remembered the blue light experience. And from that evening on, I started getting some hypnotic regressions. And that's where I got these memories that I just described.
Wow, that's quite an experience. Was it frightening?
At times it was. At times like I said, when I saw this being in the doorway of our bedroom, and I couldn't move. I had still paralyzed. Paralysis was probably the most frightening part. Yeah.
Yeah, there's many things that you just talked about that are very consistent with other experiencers.
Yes.
As I'm sure that you're probably aware. Thank you for that answer. So we'll go back to Grand Rapids. Are there any more questions in Grand Rapids?
Yes, we have probably 3 or 4 questions here, and here comes someone right now to ask. Thank you.
Is it ready?
Yep.
I think it was said in 1966 or 67 at Minot that the UFO removed the cover from the top of the missile. That would be the cover, I guess, that big concrete cover that go sideways when they launch the missile? Is that correct, that they removed the cover? And if they removed it, where did they remove it to, or just open it up?
Yeah, the report I got, by the way, this was 1968 at Minot. A B-52 crew was coming back from a training mission. They were told to go around and fly over this particular launch launch facility, actually. And as they did, they could see an object had landed next to the facility. When they came back to base and landed, they were told by a general officer that the cover, the launch facility cover, which I was told weighs about 20 tons, was physically removed from its location and placed to the side. Now, normally these covers obviously are on there for protection and would be removed by a railing system, motorized railing system that would move the cover out of position so the missile can be launched. If that gets stuck, we had explosives that would blow that cover off in order to launch the missile. In this case, none of that was used. The cover was physically lifted off and its position and placed to the side. And this was a report by Major Bradford Runyon, who is the co-pilot of this B-52. And again, it's a very well documented case. All of the B-52 crew members were interviewed. There is a videotaped interview of Major Runyon, which I have on my website, I believe. I'm sorry, I have a website called spiralgalaxy.org, and I also have a YouTube channel, so it's on one of those two places. You can listen to his testimony about this.
Wonderful. So we'll take the next question in Fargo.
We had a question, Robert, are you aware of any reports of similar incidents taking place around nuclear facilities in Russia or China?
In Russia, yes. There's a rather famous incident, I believe it was 1982, at a missile launch site in Russia, an intercontinental ballistic missile launch site. I think actually it was in Ukraine, which was part of Russia at that time. A UFO came over and actually initiated a launch sequence of the missile. And so it was going to launch. And apparently the object stopped the launch, initiated the launch and then stopped the launch. Obviously before it was launched. And again, this was documented by interview of the launch crew. Actually, there was an American reporter that documented this. Can't remember his name right now.
That is actually really frightening that they initiated the launch. Thank goodness they stopped it.
Yeah.
We will go to the next question online. And for Bob, did anyone ever tell you privately about any other incidents of UFOs over missile sites other than those that were shown in the report?
Yes. Yes, there are many witnesses that I am aware of that have had other incidents relative to what I just described, and others. But they are concerned about coming forward for many reasons. And so they have not gone public, and I'm keeping their names confidential until they decide to do so.
Okay, back to Grand Rapids for the next question.
Hi, Robert. I can't tell you how happy I am to be a part of this. But now I got to put you on the spot. If you had to guess what kind of signal it would have been that caused the missiles to go offline and also cause the loss of radio contact?
Well, let's take the first one. We had an inertial guidance system, the Minuteman 1. We didn't have any other means of tracking the guidance or navigation of the missile after it was launched, except by inertial means, which means we had gyroscopes and accelerometers, things like that, that would determine location, speed, etc. And we had a computer on board, and that was the logic coupler. Boeing did a bench test on the logic coupler to determine possible failure modes of this portion. And they were able to momentarily disable that logic coupler by sending a particular signal of a particular strength and duration, etc. I actually have those numbers, but I don't have them on the top of my head. But so they suggested that to the Air Force that it could have been this particular signal that was sent, but they couldn't explain how it got to the logic coupler. In other words, it was nothing internal. They could have done this, and that's why they made a statement that this had to be an external signal. But again, they would have had to send it, the object would have had to send it through 60 feet of earth and concrete, penetrate those triply shielded cables in order to do this. As far as loss of radio contact, this is fairly common. I've heard of many cases where our radio signals were somehow disabled. So there are various ways of doing that, I suppose. I could not explain how.
Thank you. And we'll go to Fargo for the next question.
We did have a question. Robert, do you remember or what was the duration of the incident in the Malmstrom that you experienced from beginning to end?
Well, as far as first, like I said, I got one phone call first telling me about these lights in the sky flying above us, our facility. About 5 minutes later, the object was hovering just above our location. The missile shut down within a few minutes of that. So the actual shutdown of the missiles by this object occurred, I'd say, within 10 minutes of the first sighting. I don't know if that the question you had.
Yep, that was our question. Thank you very much. And we have another one, but we can wait our turn here.
Yeah, we'll go online, and I'm going to do two because the first one is simply a comment, and this comes from Tori. He says, I want to reiterate how special it is for us to have you as our guest speaker. Thank you very much. And a couple of people hearted that. So let's go to the actual question from Mark. Captain Salas, it is an honor to be here with you today. What do you believe is the link, if any, between the Malmstrom incident and your abduction experience? Great question.
Well, again, I'm just speculating here, but I think the incident that I just described as a abduction experience is related in that it told me that they were keeping track of, or tabs of me in some way, and maybe because I don't know if I recovered all the memories that of the experience. Maybe they were trying to remind me that I was obligated to, and I feel obligated to tell the public about the Malmstrom incidents because I was a witness, and the public has a right to know about things like this. I have accumulated a lot of research material and evidence, like I said, of what happened and the cover-up of what happened after the fact. And in fact, to this day, the Air Force has not commented or responded to any questions about my incident or the other related ones involving nuclear weapons and these objects. In fact, I asked the AARO people at the end of my presentation, which I gave in February of 23, if they were going to go to the Air Force and see if they can get any validation or dismissal of what I told them. And they said no, because they had tried to do that in a previous interview that they had. I think that was the one with the Vandenberg incident. And they were rebuffed by the Air Force. In other words, their job, the job of AARO, is to try to get cooperation from various agencies that have this information on UAP, and they don't seem to be having much success with that. But no, Air Force has not recognized it. And even the Congress, I have not been invited yet to speak at a public hearing, and I'm hoping that that will happen. There will be another public hearing coming up, as you probably know, in May the 12th, I believe. There will be a public hearing on the subject. And even though I gave a presentation similar to the one I just gave you to a Representative Nancy Mace, who presided over the previous hearing, and my own Congresswoman, Julia Brownley, and even though the Malmstrom incidents were brought up in a public hearing in 2022, I believe, specifically asked to the Deputy Director of the Department of Defense at that time, Moultrie, and other gentlemen, to look into the Malmstrom incidents and report back. I haven't seen anything public about that. And I think the reason is because the DOD does not want to have a public discussion about the possibility of trying to get rid of our nuclear weapons because of the threat it possesses, and because we have this so-called policy of deterrence, nuclear deterrence, as the basis of our national security. It's not working. Nuclear deterrence may keep us temporarily safe from an attack by some perceived enemy that has other nukes. It has not kept other countries from trying to develop nuclear weapons. So the risk is growing because of that. Eventually, we're going to have to, we're going to have a criticality of just too many nuclear weapons that could possibly be used in a war, and that just might result in a nuclear war. So that's my rationale, my position, that nuclear deterrence is not a good long-term strategy.
I would have to agree. That's quite frightening, the thought of that happening. Do we have any questions in Grand Rapids?
Hi, Robert. My name's Austin. First time at MUFON. Thanks for coming. I just want to say there's a whole new cosmology out there called the electric universe that explains how these things operate with X-ray free electron lasers. I could say a lot. Longitudinal beams sucks the electricity right out of the wires itself. There's a whole new cosmology out there that you can think of as Einstein plus called the electric universe. I would just ask, have you ever seen the MH370 videos?
No, I can't say that I have. No.
And then I would ask, what do you think is the energy source for UFOs?
Well, I think if you're interested in the new cosmology, I don't know, have you ever heard of a man by the name of Jean-Pierre Petit, Frenchman?
A little bit.
Yeah. He's got something called the Janus cosmology, where he talks about the possibility of negative energy, negative mass existing in the cosmos. That
precisely.
That is the cause, really, of the fact that we have clusters of galaxies separated by what appears to be just large areas of vacant areas of space in the cosmos, and this is caused by something repelling of the nuclear mass with positive mass. Anyway, it's a very interesting concept. He himself knows quite a bit about the UFO phenomenon and has had experiences, but he's also a very well-respected scientist. I would highly recommend you go to YouTube, his YouTube channel, Jean-Pierre Petit, and look into that. But other than that, I can't really answer your question.
If I could just add to that, I've got a list of like 20 scientists and inventors and engineers that I've discovered, and I would say that the negative mass idea is energy from the vacuum itself. It's Hal Puthoff talks about this, Dan Winter, Winterberg, I forget his first name. It seems like there's a load of evidence and science out there, and then I would just end with I thought what I had was an original thought, being that bees themselves are anti-gravity machines in a sense, and it turns out I'm not the first person to have that thought. That is been established in suppressed physics. So I just want to say thank you. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Interesting question. Okay, we'll go back to Fargo.
We did have one additional question. Someone asked, Robert, in your opinion and from your experiences both in the nuclear incident at Malmstrom Air Force Base and from your personal experience or your abduction experience, do you have any sort of idea what these beings or UFOs, aliens want? Like what is their primary motivation for being here?
Well, again, this is highly speculative. Actually, I started to write a book on called Agenda, what I thought their agenda was, but I found that again highly speculative. So I decided to put that out for a while. But at any rate, it is my opinion, and again, a highly speculative opinion, that they are here to help us evolve. Obviously, we're a warlike society, civilization, and we have the capability of destroying this planet in a nuclear war and every living thing on it. And if they have lived much longer than we have, if they have, their civilizations are much older than ours, obviously they have found a way of living together in peace. And they know that's possible. And they'd like to see us do that also, evolve to a state of cohabitation and peace. So that we can, because we're on the verge of exploring other planets. There's ideas about traveling to Mars and setting up moon bases and going to other places. And I think they don't want to see us take our anger and our weapons with us on these explorations. Who knows how it might affect them in some way. So I think they are trying to assist us and this is one of the ways, like I said, I think they want to encourage us to abolish our nuclear programs, weaponry. And I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. In fact, in the New START treaty between President Obama and Putin of Russia, that was one of the objectives that was identified in the treaty, not only to reduce the number of total weaponry, but also work towards zero nuclear weapons. And we've already been able to set up investigative teams like the ones we did in Iran to observe activities on nuclear weapons development. It can be accomplished, and I think we ought to work towards that. And I think that's what they would like to see us do. And I would, of course, this may be just my own dream, but it's a good objective.
Thank you for that answer. I would agree. So our next question is coming from online. Were there humans present on the craft or any indication of human stagecraft? I'm assuming that's regarding your abduction experience.
I don't recall seeing any human-looking beings on the craft. Again, I've had 4 hypnotic regression sessions. There's probably a lot there that I have not recalled yet. But offhand, I didn't see any human-looking people on that craft.
Interesting. Thank you. Do we have any more questions in Grand Rapids?
We're here.
Hello, thanks for being here today, Robert, and it's nice talking to you. Do you think with the new transparency, what I mean by that is allowing Air Force pilots to tell us their experience with flybys with UFOs, and allowing former radar operators of Area 51 saying that actually there wasn't just one at Roswell, there may have been possibly as many as 6 alien aircraft knocked down by their high intensity radar equipment. Do you think that we will ever get more information from the government? Or will they continue to suppress information such as Admiral Byrd's diary and the fact that there's flyover areas in Antarctica that are not allowed to be flown over, where that's possibly where they are living under Antarctica?
Yes, there's a lot of questions, and I don't discount any of what you say. In each of my books, by the way, I've written 3 books. One is Faded Giant. The other one is Unidentified UFO Phenomenon, and the last one I wrote is called UAPs and the Nuclear Puzzle. But in each of those, I describe what I call a secrecy cabal. And this is I'm convinced, is an organization not only within our government, but other governments and other nations that are cooperating with ours in maintaining these secrets. And there are various reasons why they are maintaining the secrets, but they are being strongly held, and it'll be very difficult to get to the meat or the heart of what those secrets are, and how many projects there have been in studying these objects and beings, which I'm sure they have. So before we can get the truth out of our government, we're going to have to take a look at how our secrets are held, the whole process. And by we, I mean our representatives, senators, and congressmen are going to have to figure out ways to allow whistleblowers to come forward cleanly and tell what they know and get some details on these projects. And again, that's going to be difficult because this cabal is very well organized, very powerful, and I'll just have to take a wait and see attitude. But I don't see Congress or the Senate making any real progress in breaking into or changing the secrecy and classification system. If you want to know more about that system and how it works and why it's so difficult to break into that, write down ISOO, forgot what the initials stand for, but it is the executive branch organization that controls the whole secrecy and classification system.
I would like to leave you with one thought. It's my opinion that Eisenhower's deal with the aliens is to suppress the knowledge of their existence because they themselves are afraid of interacting with such a violent species as ours.
Well, I'll leave that as your own comment. I can't verify any of that myself, but I honor your comment, and I don't discount any of it.
Thank you. So we'll go back to Fargo then for another question. Are there any more questions in Fargo?
We had one question from Charles. Robert, I think you kind of spoke to this a little bit earlier, but it's okay. So sorry about that, guys. But it sounds like Robert, you've been you indicated you've spoken to some congressional officials, possibly some whistleblowers. Have you heard any updates with possible disclosure?
Oh, well, disclosure to me means that our government and other governments are speaking honestly and publicly about what they know about this phenomenon. I know that Congresswoman Luna, Paulina Luna, I believe her name is, from Florida, is organizing the next release or hearing, let's say, on the subject in May. And there will be a public hearing May the 12th. After internal discussions with people like Mr. Elizondo and David Rush. But again, this is, to me, secondhand information that they might be able to discuss in a skiff, but will they discuss it publicly? And that's going to be the big question I'll be looking for. And I kind of doubt it. But there will be witnesses coming forward. I just don't know who they would be or what they would say. I guess we'll have to wait and find out.
Thank you. We appreciate the answer.
Mm-hmm.
So our next question will come from online. The question is from James, and James says, do you think these sightings have to do with the United States military being involved in the Vietnam War?
A couple of things. Number one, there were actual sightings during the Vietnam War in Vietnam. I have reports of that from various people. And there was an appeal by General Westmoreland, I believe it was, who appealed to Nixon, Richard Nixon, the president, at one point, to allow him to use nuclear weapons to stop the movement of North Vietnamese troops from infiltrating, and of course he was denied, but it shows that, and this also happened during the Korean War with General MacArthur appealing to Truman to use nuclear weapons to stop the Chinese from invading in the Korean War. So it just shows that if we have these weapons, our military people are going to want to use them at some point, thinking that this could be very effective. But of course, it could also lead to a wider war using nuclear weapons. So that's the connection I see there.
Interesting. I'm wondering, I'm not sure about some of the context of that question, but I'm wondering if he's referring to the incident at Malmstrom, given that that was in 1967 during the Vietnam War. Was there any correlation between those requests to potentially use nuclear weapons and the time of the sighting or the incident at Malmstrom?
I don't think so. I think the appeal by the American general during the Vietnam War was in 1968, if I'm not mistaken. Our incident was in 67, but I don't know if there was any correlation between that and our incident, other than the fact that in 1967, the U.S. had about over 30,000 nuclear bombs in their stockpile, and that was the U.S. alone. I can't tell you how many Russia had, well, China didn't have many, but Russia certainly did, probably equivalent. So we had over 60,000 nuclear bombs in our arsenals. at the time of those Malmstrom incidents. And we were also fighting a war in Vietnam. So it was a very precarious situation. And this was just after the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yeah, it was definitely a frightening time. Thank you for that answer. Do we have any questions left in Grand Rapids? I hope we're not wearing you out, Bob.
No, not at all.
Oh, one more question here.
Hi, I've got another one. If disclosure from sources like the government and stuff like that were telling their of phenomenon that they observed doesn't happen, like you said, Five Eyes is probably keeping all of that suppressed. Do you think there is a form of disclosure in physics that are relative to this? Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is plasma confinement basically solves field propulsion itself. And if we can just get some people to pick up some physics textbooks or, allow free energy to propagate, we can have the abundance and disclosure through the technology avenue rather than the historical avenue. That's
I certainly think that's a possibility that we evolve scientifically and understand more, let's say, anti-gravity techniques. You've probably heard of the Canadian, let's see, what was his name? Smith, I believe his name was. He had written a letter to the Canadian government stating that he was working with Vannevar Bush and on a secret program to understand the propulsion system of UFOs, and he called it anti-gravitics or something like that. They were able to use the magnetic fields, the natural magnetic fields of the Earth, and somehow use those for propulsion in some way. So, yeah, if science will get involved. Now, that's a big if, because again, scientists have to rely on government funding and laboratories and individuals can be concerned about losing some funding for what they're doing if they try to get involved in UAP propulsion techniques. I don't know, but that is a possibility. The other possibility, of course, is the efforts all of us, all of you, really are making by inviting more witnesses to tell their stories and getting more of a big picture of what is going on with UAP and building that base of knowledge so we can do our own kind of disclosure.
Exactly. And if I could add to that, Quantum Wave Mechanics by Larry Reed, he was a Lockheed Martin engineer. And then it's a fantastic book. It's got equations for gravity manipulation on the cover. And then I would add to that, it's pretty insane after researching UFOs for the last 2 years, like I have, to see the White House say that we can manipulate time and space. So I was wondering what you had to think about that. Thank you.
Yeah, well, again, a long time ago, I stopped poo-pooing any idea on what's possible with this phenomenon. And the more people I talked to, the more witnesses I talked to, the more strangeness I heard. I had to take that into account as the possible truth of the matter. So, yeah, we'll just have to keep up with what we're doing and try to keep pressure on the Congress and the government to reveal what they know in whatever way we can. I do it by speaking out and every chance I get, and maybe at some point we'll have a meeting of the minds and get some progress on disclosure.
Likewise, thank you.
Thank you, Austin.
I have a quick question just from myself. I believe that the 1968 incident in Minot, that was the one where you were talking about the cover for the weapon was removed, like a big circular cover, and set to the side. I was looking at the document that you had up on the screen. Did it say something about a security fence being damaged as well?
Yes. Yes, that was one of the reports that were received during a debrief by that B-52 crew, that the fencing had been damaged. The fencing around the launch facility had been damaged as a result of the UFO activity there.
Thank you.
Question will come from online. So, do you know of any ongoing events or UFOs over missile silos similar to that 1967 event that are monitoring our nuclear weapons?
Yes, well, you know, I identified about 15, but there have been many more. I would recommend Robert Hastings' book, UFOs and Nukes. If you want to see reports of many other incidents, I know of others that have occurred both at Malmstrom and other missile bases. And again, I cannot speak about them without revealing some confidences. So, but if our government is really interested in getting to the bottom of this, I can certainly lead them in the right direction. Let's say that.
Thank you. And I'm just curious, I have a follow-up question myself. Given our location, Grand Forks Air Force Base used to have quite a few. They were decommissioned back in the 90s, and that lies in the heart of our area for Northland MUFON. I'm curious if you've heard of any reports out of Grand Forks.
I can't say that I have specifically to Grand Forks, no.
Thank you. That actually makes me feel a little bit better. Of course, Minot is also in North Dakota. So yeah, it's a little bit comforting there. Let's see. We will go back to Grand Rapids. Are there any more questions in Grand Rapids?
No.
Okay. And how about in Fargo?
Just a really quick follow-up on my previous question about that security fence that was damaged. And Robert, you may not know this, or it might not have been reported in any documents, but do you know anything about the nature of the damage to the fence? Or any more information on that at all?
Only that it seemed to be some very high pressure was applied to the fencing and basically squashed the fence. No, I don't know those details. However, I'm trying to think of the name of the individual that did the research. But if you go to Google and Google the 1968 Minot Air Force Base UFO incident or Bradford Runyon, you might get more details in that way.
We have one last comment. I don't see we have any other questions. And it's from Hope, and she says, when I was at UND, I did in 1978. So I assume she's referring to hearing of a report at the Grand Forks base with UFOs and missile silos. So it looks like that's it. We just want to say thank you so much. We are truly honored that you spent your afternoon with us today. Your information is invaluable. You are just a treasure. So thank you from all of us at Northland MUFON.
It's been my pleasure, and thank you for inviting me. Well, that's all I can say is I'm available. If you have any more questions, I can help with.
Ginger beer, Griffin. Yep, definitely some ginger in that one. Wow. Oh, you're still here. Okay, well, since you're still here, please hit that like, please hit subscribe. I'm trying to grow that channel. We can use all the help we can get, all right? Thank you. Appreciate it. How many missiles went down?